In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the solver feature. The solver feature is a what-if analysis tool, and it's located on your data ribbon. Prior to using the solver, what I usually like to do is take the spreadsheet and do a save as and save it with a different file name. So in case there's issues while running solver, I've got my original to go back to. So I'm going to go and I'm just saving this. I'm just going to pop it on my desktop real quick, and I just put a safety awareness 2 after it so that I do have my original to go back and look at later on. When I use the solver feature, as we start with a new spreadsheet, I think it's good to go in and look at how the spreadsheet is built. So I'm going to display my formulas and I'm going to look at the structure of the workbook. And you can see here when I do that there are a number of different formulas that are added to this spreadsheet to come up or help with the end result. You'll notice here too that I have some cells that have zeros in them, and basically that's part of what we will be using solver to help us come up with a solution for. So the structure of the workbook's important as you look at it. Where the zeros are in the spreadsheet's important for putting all the different constraints in that we'll be doing here in just a minute. And also sometimes if you accidentally click on a cell that has a formula in it, you can lose your formula through the solver process. So that's why I want to look at the structure as we start here. I think it's important as you work on workbooks that you look at the structure of the workbook too. And again, we have that original to go back to if we need to at a later time. I'm going to go back into the values version of the spreadsheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the solver feature. And when you open up the solver dialog box, there's different parts of solver that we have to look at. The very first important part is to figure out what it is that you want solver to help you solve for. And in this example, we're looking at an advertising budget, and we're looking to reach as many consumers as we possibly can. So I'm going to click on F11, which there was a formula in that spreadsheet, and everything basically leads to that end result. You can solve for a lot of different things. In this case, the scenario that I'm looking at is we're solving to reach as many consumers as we can with our advertising budget. Could be in some cases you're solving to have as much profit as you can, to have the least amount of expenses as you can. So the starting point is to figure out what is it that you're solving for. In this case, I'm solving to reach as many consumers as I possibly can. And up here you can see there's a number of different consumers that are supposedly reached with these different advertising media. So you solve on a cell that has a formula in it. F11 has a formula. The next part, and of course you can change, you can solve for a maximum, which is what we want in this scenario. Could solve for a minimum, or you could solve for a specific value. We're solving for as many people, maximum, that we can reach with this solution. The variable cells, we'll just click on this to collapse that, is going to be where you have an open area in the spreadsheet, or where the variables are. And when we looked at the structure of the spreadsheet a minute ago, that's where the zeros were. Now it looks like there's zeros down here, but there are formulas attached to those particular cells. And so when you're looking at your solver parameter and trying to figure out what are the changing or the variable cells, many times it is where the zeros are in the spreadsheet when you look at the structure of the workbook. So that's the second part. You've got to figure out, first of all, what are you solving for, and where are your variable cells in the spreadsheet. The next part is to figure out what your constraints are. Now this depends on the circumstances, but the example that we're dealing with here is, let's assume that there's only a certain amount of ads that can be purchased for the TV and for internet and radio, and we're going to set constraints for that. So I'm going to click on Add, and I'm going to click on where the television ads variable is. And let's assume that we can only buy within a certain time frame 14 ads. So I'm going to say C10 less than or equal to 14. And I'm going to hit add. And let's assume that internet, we're only allowed to place 30 ads. So we're going to go D10 less than or equal to 30. I'm going to add that constraint. And then for the radio ads, again, let's assume that during a certain time frame that you're only allowed to purchase so many ads. I'm going to set that, the ads being 21. Now this would be something you'd have to check with the TV stations and the internet where you're doing your advertising and your radio to see if they have a certain limit of ads that you can purchase. So we're setting based on what that scenario would be. I'll do add. At any point when you're using Solver, you can hit the cancel. So you can go back in and you can look at what you've set. You always want to be careful when you go back in here that you don't change your objective of what you're solving for and that you don't change your variables. But many times you do want to look at what constraints you have set, and it basically saves within this dialog box. I'm going to go in and add again. Let's assume that we have decided within our company that we want at least one ad for TV, internet, and radio. Now since it's the same constraint, I could go in and I could select all three cells, that range, at the same time, and I could set a constraint of greater than or equal to 1. So we've decided that we want to place at least one ad in those different media outlets. And so I'm going to hit add. And again, I could hit cancel and I could go and look at what I've just set. Now, I need Solver to help me come up with a number in those particular variables. So I'm going to click add, and again, because I'm going to set the same constraint, I can go and I can select all of them at the same time, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to say integer because I want to solve for a number. I want Excel to help come up with a solution, a number. So I'm going to set integer and I'll do add. Again, at any point you can go in and cancel and you can take a look at what you have set. One last constraint that I'm going to add for this particular scenario is I'm going to click add, and let's assume that we only have so much of a budget to work with for this advertising campaign. So where's our total cost? It would be in F12. And let's assume our budget was $24,000. So I would click on F12 and I would say less than or equal to $24,000. I'll hit add. I'm going to cancel so I can look at what I have, and all the constraints that I've set so far are shown for me. Now for F12 that I just said, I don't have to set a minimum number because I want to spend up to that $24,000. And I don't have to say integer because F12 is a formula. There's a formula in that particular cell. So I just need to say solve up to, or let's spend up to $24,000. We're just going to go for a simple solution to our problem. So I'm going to change it to simple LP. It's a simple solving method. And at this point, I'm ready to go and try to come up with, or have Solver help me with a solution for spending my advertising money. I'm going to click on Solve. Runs through. I'll move this dialog box so you can see it. And what Solver feels is the best way to spend our money is to buy 1 TV ad, 30 internet ads, and 8 radio ads. That would reach the most population based for the $24,000. Now managers would maybe look at that and say, well, I'm not just going to buy 1 TV ad, but this is what Solver feels would be the best use of the funds and to reach the biggest audience base. It isn't what necessarily has to be done, but it gives you a starting point instead of just randomly plugging in numbers yourself. At this point, you can do a couple things. We could create an answer report, which generates an extra spreadsheet that we can kind of look at and analyze the information. And the other thing we could do is we could save this scenario. So I'm going to click on Save Scenario, and we'll just say May campaign. Maybe we were looking at this for the May advertising campaign. go ahead and do OK. And again, I'll select, or I will click OK. And we have that scenario then saved within the scenario manager.